What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and since my previous video on Baldur's Gate 3, there's been some really interesting and somewhat worrying revelations coming to the surface. There's a big online debate across platforms of BG3's existence shattering fan expectations while annoying the Western developers across the industry. And the question at the heart of this is if Baldur's Gate 3 should be considered the standard, and if not, why? TheGamer.com also chimed in with this debate with their article titled "Baldur's Gate 3 should raise the standard of RPGs going forward." Developers are worried about rising player expectations after the storming hit of Baldur's Gate 3, but players are right to expect more. For a site like The Gamer, which is usually full of horrendous takes, they actually have me agreeing with them for once. They go on to say that BG3 is a game changer and its peak on Steam of over 850,000 players is insane. They compare the amount of people playing Baldur's Gate right now to be close to the entire population of San Francisco, which is crazy, but it's awesome to see. The gist is that nobody is expecting small indie teams to create a Baldur's Gate level game in terms of scope or choice. But fans are quickly pushing back, saying the larger studios, your Ubisofts or Blizzards, have no excuse when they have more than enough resources. The Gamer brings up the recent Pokemon games and how they are clear examples of AAA million-dollar funded studios giving the bare minimum effort in terms of game development. And it's true, because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were disappointing games that ran like garbage and looked generations behind as well. Yet the game sold millions due to brand recognition, which doesn't incentivize Nintendo or developer Game Freak to change anything about their business practices. In my previous video, I spoke about the indie dev Xalavier Nelson Jr., who kind of sparked this entire debate when they made a huge thread about why Baldur's Gate 3 should not be the new standard going forward. And since then, there's been some interesting responses to that thread that, weirdly enough, have actually been scrubbed from Twitter. One of these devs is Juno Blease, a former dev at Riot Games who now works at a publishing company in Los Angeles. Tweets were unearthed from Juno where she said, and I quote, "Oh boy, here comes my usual take. I can't disagree with this one more. Whenever a game disrupts the industry and delights players beyond expectations, it absolutely raises industry and genre standards regardless of the why and how. I am not saying games should all be judged the same way across different production budgets and experiences, but I believe most players understand the context to not compare apples to oranges. What's worrying and upsetting to me is seeing colleagues in AAA studios jump at the opportunity to agree with this sentiment. We should look at the Larian success story and ask ourselves, how are we going to make our games better and create the next games that shake up the industry? Players should and must always expect more from us, never less." End quote. And like I said, Juno has deleted this tweet from her profile already, likely because what she said probably got her into hot water behind the scenes with other devs. This is just one example of how the AAA game industry is kind of like one big club. And if you don't agree or champion every opinion that's considered politically correct, you'll likely be attacked or ridiculed for raging against the corporate machine, so to speak. But the thing is that what Juno said is right. As players, you should expect more from devs and not less. I've explained months ago in my Why Modern Gaming is Dying video that video games are kind of the only product that you buy fully expecting it to not work properly. And when you compare the functionality and quality of video games at release compared to any other product type ever, they seem to be the only one that always has problems. Like, you wouldn't buy a car if the dealership told you the GPS didn't work and the brakes sometimes fail, since it's okay, they'll just fix it later, I guess. You also wouldn't buy a fridge if the goddamn thing just randomly died for hours at a time, threatening the quality of the food that you keep in it. But when it comes to video games, it's universally accepted that you're probably gonna get something that doesn't work properly. Or if you're a PC gamer, you'll likely get multiple big games in a row that just don't work at all on release. You only need to look at the most recent games of 2023 that have released on PC to confirm that this problem is not a one studio issue, but an industry-wide one. And all the games listed here are not indie games made by a team of 3 people, but multi-million-dollar finance companies with enough money to launch finished products if they wanted to. But the truth is that they don't, and when you compare Baldur's Gate 3 to the most recent AAA releases on PC, it's actually one of the only PC games at release that not only meets player expectations, but it actually works at release, which is pathetically not the industry standard right now. Gaming in general has kind of been worsening in quality over the years, as I'm sure you've noticed. The games of the early 2000s usually all shipped squeaky clean of any game-breaking bugs, obviously because there was no always online patch it later option. Devs and publishers had to ensure what they were releasing actually worked when their games got into the hands of their customers. Nowadays, games are just released to hit financial quarterly earnings even if they don't work. But it's fine, because they can just fix it later, and that's just how it is apparently. There's even articles resurfacing due to this Baldur's Gate 3 dev controversy like this one from PC Gamer titled, "The cinematic BioWare-style RPG is dead, it just doesn't know it yet." Flashy blockbuster RPGs feel increasingly dated in the face of a tidal wave of fresh novelties. You sure about that, PC Gamer? Because of right now, BG3 has a higher Metacritic score than Zelda, which fills my cold dead heart with joy. PC Gamer went on to say, "In the face of all these alternatives, the cinematic RPG, once novel and exciting, now feels a bit old-fashioned. Though still capable of telling riveting stories, they've become mechanically conservative, trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator." And like a lot of things modern game journos say these days, it all usually ages like spoiled milk as well. Remember how I said the gamer usually says moronic things? Well, that happened again as well with their article titled, "Baldur's Gate 3's weakest element is the unforgiving combat." And unsurprisingly, this article is yet again from journalist Jade King, who has been featured on this channel many times before for spewing nonsense like Final Fantasy isn't gay enough, and its take on slavery doesn't appeal to their cookie-cutter philosophies. And this is also the journalist who claps like a seal when corporations pander to gender identities like in Overwatch 2, so yeah, we're in for a stupid article here is what I'm saying. Jade King makes it very apparent that they're playing BG3 on the easiest difficulty, and even then they're getting decimated at almost every combat encounter. They explain that they feel like they go into every battle unprepared and are failing to understand even the easiest of mechanics. Yet by their opinion, the weakest part of BG3 is its combat, not because it's complicated and full of variety, but because they suck at it. While opinions are opinions, for anyone who's played the Divinity Original Sin games, BG3's combat should feel similar. And these games are all full of wildly imaginative scenarios where you have to use your brain in order to succeed, which is probably why modern game journalists like this are failing so bad at it. And this kind of encapsulates the entire fiasco surrounding Baldur's Gate in a way rather nicely too. The game is being torn down and attacked for being complicated and full of variety. It's basically the anti-AAA game. These journos and devs are so used to creating cookie-cutter games that hold players' hands constantly and give options like skipping boss fights when they die too much. And when they're met with a game made by talented developers that actually pushes the medium forward, their initial instinct isn't of praise, but of ruin. Thankfully, there are at least some devs with the balls to actually say what needs to be said. Which brings me to this dev named Igor Ostapenko. He had a lot to say about Baldur's Gate 3, and I think it's really worth hearing, so, and I quote, "Apparently there's an ongoing discussion regarding Baldur's Gate 3, however it should or shouldn't be considered as a new standard for RPGs by players and other developers, so here's my take regarding this matter. Larian Studios didn't become a successful business in one day. Actually, it took them almost 20 years to get to where they are today. They were on the edge of bankruptcy twice and had to outsource for a decade in order to get recognized and stand on their feet strongly. The amount of offices, personnel, access to IP, their experiences with RPG, love and trust of the community, including EA support, financing, etc. were achieved by many years of hard work and commitment. Larian working on BG3 and having all the expertise and resources they have is not an anomaly. It's a result and a bit of luck, of course, so in my opinion, whenever they will achieve a success with Baldur's Gate 3 becoming a worthy successor and improvement of the series, their efforts by all means should be considered as a new standard not only for RPGs, but any other game that shares similar mechanics. Let's spin this a bit more. Should Mortal Kombat games not be considered as a standard for fighting games only because Midway and NetherRealm have been developing those games for the past 30 years and have all the expertise and resources they have today? Should recent and upcoming GTA games be treated the same way when it comes to open world action games? Or maybe Witcher 3, which already became a RPG standard in many ways? Also, trying to manage expectations of players in this situation is pointless. It would be really close to trying to control what people like or not. If players will love something in BG3, they would definitely want to have a similar experience in the future RPGs they play, or maybe even in games within other genres. All you can do as a developer is understand if the experiences that is now expected by players fits well with the project's vision, setting, and story. Try to implement fitting features in a capacity that makes sense based on available resources, or add those features later if the product will be financially successful enough, or add those features in the new project if it still makes sense, end quote. What Igor says here is very true, and I think he words it really well too. Mortal Kombat is absolutely the standard for fighting games. Think about it, before NetherRealm added a cinematic story mode to their fighting games, that genre largely just had a typical arcade mode for story, and that was it. But ever since NetherRealm pushed the genre forward with Mortal Kombat and Injustice in terms of their stories, other fighting games had to adapt or be left in the past. This is why the newest Street Fighter game has an entire expansive single-player mode. This concept would never have existed had NetherRealm not raised the standard. And by the usual gaming devs mentality, what Mortal Kombat did by ushering in a new wave of ideas into fighting games like RPG mechanics with Injustice and more, this shouldn't be celebrated but torn down because it would raise unrealistic expectations going forward. What Mortal Kombat did to fighters is exactly what Baldur's Gate is doing to RPGs. Larian should be applauded, not torn down for pushing the medium forward. But what I do notice is that predatory practices are often ignored by these same devs. Speaking of Street Fighter, recently Capcom released a Ninja Turtles crossover bundle, and fans are mad that the skins cost $15 for each turtle. Meaning if you buy the entire bundle set, that brings it to $60 American, which is literally the price of Street Fighter 6 at release. So how can you justify 4 skins costing as much as the entire game itself? You can't. There simply isn't any justification for this. But like I said, when this happens, these same game devs are silent, because they know predatory practices like these help fund them. But there's a disconnect here because players are being fleeced for things that in no way should cost this much. Think about it, dude. Those 4 skins cost as much as Baldur's Gate 3. How in the freshest of hells does anyone justify that making sense? But this is where we stand right now at this moment. Modern gaming is at a crucial crossroads right now, and you as the consumer have a choice to make going forward. You need to ask yourself, will you keep rewarding microtransactions in games, or will you instead vote with your wallet and support stuff like Baldur's Gate? Maybe a hot take, but I don't think fully priced AAA games should have any microtransactions at all. And if they do, nothing cosmetic-wise should cost anything more than $5 at best. The fact you can buy amazing indie games for the price of one of these Ninja Turtle skins is just stupid. Even Twitter users are dunking on these game devs with stuff like, basically, if games like Skyrim, Mass Effect got released today, they would also get called out by mid-devs for over-delivering and setting outlandish expectations. Genuinely unbelievable. Imagine a film director rushing to Twitter after a great film releases to tell everyone not to expect better movies. What a great industry we have here. Love seeing all the backlash in this thread. In my humble opinion, as consumers, we absolutely can and should expect more from developers and studios, particularly from the AAA segment. There's so many more comments, but all of these ring true, especially the one comparing film directors bitching if a great movie got released. It's really only the gaming industry that uniquely tries to spin any positivity consumers get into detrimental, driveled nonsense. We should all expect great products for the prices that we pay. If games are getting more expensive, then so too should the quality and standard of them as well. If your new AAA game is going to be a hot piece of garbage, then players should have the option to pay reduced prices as well. But we all know that if that happens, studios and publishers would move heaven and earth to ensure they retain the highest possible payout. I'll just leave you with this final thing to think over. Whenever Destiny 2 has actual real problems that need fixing, Bungie will take literal months until they fix the problem. But when players find creative ways in-game to gain resources quickly or reduce the grind, Bungie will fix that shit within a few hours. So when these devs and publishers tell you that your expectations are unrealistic and you shouldn't expect quality when they expect your money, I just want you to know that deep down in my core, I just know that not only are they bullshitting you, but they think you're all idiots who don't know any better. So please, dear viewer, stop, listen, and learn to read the room when these predatory companies try to spin stories to make you seem like you're in the wrong. You deserve better, regardless of what some game dev tells you. You and I both deserve so much better than what we're getting right now. So thank you for watching, subscribe for more in the future, and like the video to help the channel out. I'll probably cool off on the Baldur's Gate videos for now unless something else happens, but let me know in the comments in case something does. Have a great day, enjoy gaming, and I'll see you in the next one.